Hello, Bournemouth fans. Hope you're doing well and welcome to the second look. A chance to go through Bournemouth's 1-0 win at the Bet365 Stadium in a little bit more detail. This video forms part of an extended audio pod that can be heard on your podcast app. That's out every Monday morning, so just search for Back of the Net Bournemouth, and whilst you're at it, if you give us 5 stars, we'd really appreciate it. So joining me today, we've got pod regular Jeff Hayward. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good, Sam. Very good, thank you.
And a smile on your face after a 1-0 win.
Always good to win ugly.
That's what I like to hear. Tom Jordan's here as well. Tom, how are you, sir?
Yeah, good, mate. Happy and relieved after that one, I think.
Good man. And a happy new year to you all, and also to Neil Dawson, who's here with us as well. How are you, Neil?
I'm very good. Who said they couldn't do it on a wet night away at Stoke?
Well, we certainly did it, but it wasn't a pretty watch, was it, Jeff?
Not pretty. And you know, I think credit to Stoke. You look at their strengths, and their strengths. One of their key strengths is stopping the opposition playing, and I thought they stopped us pretty effectively for much of the game. We didn't help ourselves, but you know, we got the win. Who cares? Who cares?
Neil, when you saw Brentford and Stoke, the two fixtures that we had in the last week or so, how many points were you wanting us to get from that? I mean, obviously 6, but what was your reasonable tally?
I think I hoped for 4. And with a bit more luck, we could have got 4 as well, because Brentford was a pretty even game. So yeah, 4 points. 4 points would have been good. The most important thing to do with everyone else winning was not turn that into 1 or 0.
But weirdly, Tom, when you're looking at performance levels, if you weren't to know the result, you look at that Brentford performance and think that's the one that got us the 3 points, not the one that we saw yesterday, because 2 very different performances.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where you've got to look at the opposition. And sometimes, like we've alluded to, you just got to find a way to win. I expected Stoke to be like that. They've got a lot of kind of old school players, haven't they? John Obi Mikel, Allen, people like that. And it was just about getting over the line, just hoping that make sure we keep the back door closed and hopefully nick something. And that's what we did. So it's an important thing to have when you're not playing well, is to grind it out. And virtually every team in the league will look at Stoke away on the fixtures and think, oh, just get out of there with something. And we've done it. So got that one out of the way. So yeah, I'm the same as Neil. I wanted 4. 4 I would have been happy with, but we'll take 3.
Saw the team at 6:45, and before that I saw some tweets coming out from Dan Rose from the Echo. The stadium was plunged into darkness, but they got the lighting back, and it was snowing up there. And yeah, conditions didn't look great. You know, it certainly seemed cold. It felt cold even, you know, down here. But anyway, the team came out at 6:45, Jeff, and 2 up top, Surridge and Solanke. I think a lot of us seem to expect that.
I think the team selection was probably driven by a couple of things. Let's be honest, Brooksy was looking like he needed a rest after that Brentford game. He wasn't on the top of his game, and I think it was a good shout to give him a break. And Phil Bill, star of our midfield, just sink in for a bit, was not available. And I think Jason probably looked at things. What I was quite pleased about was they chose Sam above Josh, because I think he could have easily just gone for King and Solanke up front. But I think the way that Surridge and Solanke played at Barnsley was right to give that another go.
It's a bit of a weird one, Tom, actually, because in the last match against Brentford, he brings Josh off the bench and not Sam Surridge, yet opts to start with Sam. What's that all about?
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I agree with Jeff. I was glad to see that team, to be honest. Probably nudged along by Billing being unavailable as well. Doesn't seem to start Gosling very much at all. So yeah, and in terms of that, I wonder if in the week he just maybe felt that Josh could stretch him a bit more of his pace. But yeah, I was more than happy to see that lineup. Diego come back in. Yeah, it didn't overly surprise me, and yeah, I was quite happy with the selection. And like Jeff said, it was definitely time for Brooks to have a bit of a rotation onto the bench, I think.
I think Billing had a knock or something like that, and it's
strain, I think, yeah.
Groin strain, right? And I was looking at it thinking, oh, you know what? I think this kind of team that we're playing against could do with us having Phil Billing in there. How times have changed, Neil. He's been a really influential player recently, hasn't he?
How fickle we all are. So now we weep into our laptops when we see that he's not playing. But that's to his credit, isn't it? Because lots of players have come back and won fans over at this club. Harry Arter being a prime example. And I think that influenced his decision to pick Sam Surridge, because I think he knew that he needed an extra body in the box defending corners without Phil Billing. So, and I think Josh King is not a great defender of crosses, whereas Surridge is. So I think he probably thought of playing Josh King, but I think not having Phil Billing and knowing that Stoke would have about 7 6-footers attacking every set piece, I think that helped with get Surridge a spot in the starting lineup.
But I mean, the first half I thought was pretty poor, Neil. I mean, I don't know what you thought about it, but obviously we were playing the three at the back, which really means the emphasis has got to be on the wing backs to get further up the pitch. But they didn't seem to. Stoke seemed to press very high, and it meant that Lewis Cook and Jefferson Lerma seemed very exposed, and they overran our midfield really easily. And but they didn't do much with their possession. I mean, they had a few shots, a few good crosses, but other than that, they weren't that much of a threat. But all the same, it was still a bit worrying, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you could pick any podcast from the last 60 where we've played five at the back and just repeat something that one of us has said. But because I mean, I liked two up top in the Championship. I'm not so sure in the Premier League. I like it in the Championship because I think we can get away with a back four because we've got better players up the pitch. We can play higher up the pitch. We're not as exposed to pace as maybe we are in the Premier League. So two up top doesn't bother me, but the five at the back irritates me because you're relying on two players effectively to get the ball in. And when those players are either Kelly or Rico, neither of which are, we've discussed long and hard, they're not great wing backs. They're probably better full backs. Adam Smith having a really cold spell for me in the last few games. He's not a crosser of the ball. He tends to charge into the box rather than cross the ball. So I just think you've got Surridge and Solanke up front, and then you're not crossing the ball to them. To me, you need wide players and overlapping fullbacks if you're going to play two up front. But no, Stoke didn't do an awful lot. We gave the ball away a lot, but I was looking at the statistics. They gave the ball away more than us, and I think that was a problem. Both sides got into good areas, and then often the ball out wide was poor. So there were chances at both ends, which I'm sure we'll come to talk about. But in terms of a spectacle of football, it was hard to keep your eyes on it at times.
Yeah, no, agreed. Saturday night prime time, not the best watch. And, having said that, we had a fairly decent chance early doors from the left-hand side. Diego Rico, ironically, putting in a fairly decent cross, one of his better ones. And Sam Surridge just turned almost 180 and tried to fire it into the bottom corner, but just sort of mistimed his shot. Not really sure what happened. I think he almost toe punted it in the end, Jeff. But it was actually a good chance when you look at it.
It was a good chance. It sort of skewed off his left foot, and you kind of thought, oh well, if we've started promisingly like that, let's wait for the flurry of chances to follow. But that actually, what we had two real efforts on goal in that first half. It felt like anyway, and I think Neil's right. Rinse and repeat the advice on playing five at the back. One of the things that struck me last night was just the distance. Where we're passing out from the back so many times within our 18-yard area or near the corner flag, trying to play pretty football and that's easier to press than if we're further up the pitch, right? So get further up the pitch, because what they were doing, or what we were doing, was lumping the ball forward from our 18-yard line, which is no service at all to Solanke or Surridge, against three big centre halves. They couldn't win anything, and the midfield was so further back that they couldn't pick up the second ball. So we kept conceding space in our own half, which was super frustrating. We've got to push further up. You can play the pretty football further up, but not so deep. And it was a bit toe curling. I don't know about you, Tom. I was full of expletives in that first half when I kept seeing the ball careering around the back line like it was a hot potato at times.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to watch, wasn't it? And but like what Neil said, I quite like the two up top. But I remember the Barnsley game, and I remember Smithy had a brilliant first half, and Brooks was in front of him, and they were linking up really well. And I think you've almost got to look at it in the way that, Diego had a bad game and Smithy was poor as well. And they're the two that we're asking to create things for us. And I just feel like both of them have had better performances when they've got a man in front of them. And they're being asked to do so much. And yeah, it was one of them. I was surprised. I think you go away to Stoke, you know what type of game it's going to be, but I can understand the two up top, but I didn't think we needed that kind of 5-3, whatever you want to call it, at the back, really, going there. Be interested to see what he does with two winnable home games, to see what he does there, because they're the type of games that I would like to see us go back to a 4 potentially. But yeah, it was really frustrating, and like you say, we weren't. Another player that I think we are missing that gets overlooked is Chris Mepham, in the sense that I think he gets us up the pitch as a defensive unit. I like the way Meps kind of gets the ball and straight away, he's a couple of touches and he brings yards on and gets the players up the pitch. Whereas we seem to be getting it last night and just standing still and just passing like that. And so I think we're missing Meps in that sense. But yeah, it was definitely hard to watch at times. But I think a lot of it was down to the wing backs having poor games. And if both of them are off it, we're really going to struggle to give the right service to that front two.
Yeah, completely agree. They were off their games, and Stoke had their moments early doors with a couple of shots that were blazed over the top. One of them from Stephen Fletcher, and most of them seemed to occur in midfield, where we gave the ball away and they managed to sort of counter fairly quickly, and they cut through our defence with relative ease. And then there was a Begovic. I think he was forced into a save from a low Joe Allen shot, which came about. That was after Diego Rico screwed up an intended clearance. And Stoke's pressing was, fairly impressive, I've got to say. And it seemed to be like from that moment onwards, throughout the game, there were a number of long balls by our midfielders. And maybe that was a sort of direct tactic to maybe compensate for the wing-backs not being effective, because Lewis Kirk and Jefferson Lerma firing through balls with varying degrees of effect. I mean, that one from Lerma onto the chest of Solanke, who turned around the corner of the defender and nearly put Sam Surridge through. I mean, that would have been a cracking goal. But Neil, we seemed to sort of start to deploy different tactics as the half went on.
Yeah, we certainly got longer and longer in terms of the way we were looking to play. And I think that's part of the frustration when Jeff was talking about the expletives, because their back three I thought were excellent. Suter, the three centre-halves that they had, Suter, Chester, and I can't remember who the other one was. So there was the odd moment where Solanke was able to turn and do something, but Surridge did nothing against their back three really all game. And Solanke had the odd moment, but normally he was bullied out of it in the air and on the ground. But I think it was because we were so far back, we got trapped so far back that we were forced to go long because that's all we could do. And I think the other key moment in the game, you mentioned Stephen Fletcher. If you have the name Steve Fletcher, can you only play as a target man, do you think? You can't imagine a little skipping Steve Fletcher winger now, can you? I think those two have ruined it for any little boys that call Stephen Fletcher. But him going off really helped us, I think, because they were looking to target us, and he was starting to look quite dangerous. There were some crosses that came in after he went off that I think he could have made something of. Yeah,
agreed. And as I alluded to, I mean, Lewis Cook and Lerma firing these. But I mean, there was one that Dom Solanke chance, Jeff, where it was a absolutely devastating ball from Lewis Cook, I thought, and Dom Solanke just met the keeper and just lobbed it a little bit too much.
Yeah, I was channeling Kirk Tovey, thinking he's going to score.
Typical, wasn't it?
Yeah, he just got too much on it. What he obviously didn't account for was the wet and windy Stoke conditions that we all know and are so familiar with. He just got too much on it, and a lighter touch, that's a goal. If he'd have hooked it, Sam Surridge would probably have gotten in for a tap in. So just one of those things, you kind of see those chances during a game, and you think maybe it's not going to be our night. I mean, it's a terrific ball from Lewis Cook, and actually, you talk about those long sort of through balls that we were playing, which was obviously, if you listen to JT after the game, he was talking about they'd obviously been working on that as some sort of tactic for the game. I think the disappointing thing was that our delivery, those sorts of balls, that we weren't quite good enough. We could often see the pass, but we just couldn't pass it right, and Lewis Cook was the man you wanted to have the ball for that sort of thing. I mean, Jeff Lerma was his passing balls out of touch, with no pressure on him at times during that game. Just wasn't really on it, or he's blasting them like exocets. I mean, Solanke must still have a bruise from where he chested that ball down. He hit it like a rocket at him.
We all clamoured for Sam Surridge to be starting. And like Neil said, I thought he actually had a fairly poor game. It certainly wasn't one of his best. And I noticed that him and Dom Solanke at times, when those long balls were being fired and you're down the centre of the pitch, they were often making the same run. And it was... one thing he did do of note was win a free kick on around 35 minutes, which I think Stanislas took and whipped it around the wall. I think it was going wide anyway, but it was a good save from the keeper. And then, as we spoke about earlier, that Lerma ball through to Dom Solanke. But as a half, it was, pretty turgid, I've got to say. And there are other players that I haven't really mentioned yet that weren't particularly great either. I mean, Junior Stanislas was a bit absent, Tom.
Yeah, he was. He seems to be, at the moment, he seems to be really hot and cold, doesn't he? And the problem with Junior is it seems like if he's not having one of his top games, you hardly know he's there. I feel for him in the sense that he's going from different positions from game to game. I think he ended up at right back. He's playing in the hole, then he's playing on the wing, then he's playing wing back. So it must be difficult for him to get that sort of consistency and kind of relationships with players. But yeah, it was a weird one. And like you said about Sam Surridge, as much as they didn't get the service, he wasn't doing what I expected him to do in terms of bully the centre-halves. They were, I think Neil alluded to it, they were bossing him. But he wasn't harrying himself, making himself a nuisance, which I kind of expected. And I wonder if it was, like Jeff said, Jason did say about them long balls. And I wonder if their centre-halves were getting so much joy, the only thing they probably didn't have was that pace. And I wonder if that was why we were trying to turn them a little bit more. And it was quite fitting that that's where we got the goal from. But because they were, as a free, they were very good. And I felt they deserve credit in making Dom and Sam have a really difficult time.
So you're JT, Neil, half-time. What on earth do you say to the players? Or do you make any formation changes? What was your thoughts? What do we need to do?
Well, get the hairdryer out, Neil. That's what you need.
I think what I would have done is probably what he did do, because we played noticeably further up the pitch in the second half, and we put a bit of a press on because we didn't press from the start. That might have been a deliberate thing. I don't know. I always assume it must be, because surely not all the players would disobey the orders all at the same time. But so clearly he said afterwards that he told the team to be more aggressive, get higher up the pitch, and put a bit of a press on, and that got us a little bit more into the game. But still, our passing was so awry. But I mean, I'd have been tempted to have made a change at half time and changed the formation, gone to a back four, and gone to a front three. Personally, but he didn't. He left his changes to very late, and he was getting quite a bit of stick for it on social media as well. And then, of course, you become a god because the goal goes in.
Yeah. Well, regarding the formation, you say that. I mean, without Stephen Fletcher, as you say, Stoke's forward play seemed to be pretty blunt. So was almost playing three at the back a little bit too negative for us.
Yeah, I don't think, and that was the point earlier on. I think unless you play against Norwich or Watford, they're probably the only two squads that could compete with us. We should be balls out in any game, because I think even if we go 1-0 down, as we know, because we're second top scorers in the division, it doesn't really matter. It's the same as Eddie's championship side. We could often go 2-0 down and you'd still be sat there thinking, I'm fairly comfortable with this. It's not like the Premier League, is it? So I don't understand it. I would go for every game. And you can always shore up shop once you've got a lead with 10, 15 minutes to go if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, I don't know about you, but I was just looking for a little bit more intent and a little bit more desire. And there were little key moments that actually, made me lick my lips. But then I was let down with the final pass. I mean, do you remember that 40-yard run from Diego Rico that looked really promising? Plays it behind Dom Solanke and it goes out for a throw. Yeah. Lloyd Kelly, fast, zippy passes to the feet of the opposition. I was noticing, I thought Lloyd Kelly did all right actually yesterday, but there were just these little moments that are just so frustrating. And in the final third, it was almost like it was a training drill at times, and there wasn't the desire to get forward. And we tended to sort of play it, around their midfield and defensive banks that had already lined up. And we just found it very difficult to break through. Frustrating.
Yeah, I think I think John Obi Mikel did a brilliant job on Junior. I mean, he was all over him pretty much. You know, from when they figured out where Junior was playing, he picked him up and he bullied him, which was effective. I thought their sort of their wing backs, McLean and the other guy, did a really good job on stopping Smith and Rico getting forwards as well. You know, I think Adam Smith was a bit intimidated. You know, he got a few hefty challenges that didn't help him. And I think Diego Rico, you know, there was a time you talk about that brilliant run. I mean, it was you thought, wow, this is beautiful football. And then he passes to nobody. It's like, what's going on? But there was another time where he's crying out for a first-time delivery into the box. He takes another touch, and they get organised, and it's easily cleared. So we've talked about this before. You know, sometimes our players, when they're not performing, it's the basics that suffer. You know, playing the ball behind your teammate, so they have to go back and get it. And there was a lot of that going on last night as well. It just we didn't seem to be on the same wavelength, and I did think it had 0-0 written all over it, so delighted to be proved wrong.
Yeah, and you mentioned that first time cross that Diego Rico should have done. I think that's when Lerma played it out to him, and it sort of reminded me of Dom Solanke's goal at home to Reading, where the ball was fed out to Lloyd Kelly. He didn't take a touch; he just whipped it in straight away, and that's what we needed. But it just held up too long, and so changes were made. And you have to remind me of them. But Brooks, came on, Tom, and Brooks, when he does come on, I think he's not been great recently, but he just does give that extra dynamic, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he also just worries the opposition, I think, and they automatically think, oh, he's a danger man. Do you know what I mean? And we know he's a clever player. He held on to it a bit too long when he first come on, but he's still a clever player and gets in good pockets and things like that. We didn't really, he took off Surridge, didn't he? So changed system slightly, but obviously kept with that three at the back. I think in terms of that three at the back, I agree that I didn't think it was necessary yesterday. But if you're going to play it, it doesn't have to be negative in the sense that you play three at the back, it means you should have an extra body to be able to play out from the back. But that means you've got to play it quickly. There's no point of Begovic rolling it to the centre-halves, them knocking it between each other and then going long. Well, there's no point. You might as well only have two centre-halves. I think, and that's another case where I think it's difficult when you don't. I think Mepham's probably our best player at that. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it unless it's implemented in the right way. And we just weren't. It was just a pointless having three of them there at times. But yeah, I think the change was, like I think Neil said, we were crying out for it, and probably later than I expected. But like we said, we got the goal, so he looks like a genius. But it was the sub. It was the obvious sub, wasn't it? As much as I will say, a lot of people wanted Stanislas to come off, which I'm pleased he didn't. But he's one of them players, like we said earlier with Junior. He was pretty invisible, but that's kind of why you keep him on the pitch. Yeah. For that very reason. But yeah, it was the right change, and I think if anything, it just that second half, the only thing we did a bit better, I think we mentioned, was just literally the team went up the pitch. That's all that we did. We didn't change the system. Everyone just went up the pitch, which was so obvious watching the game, wasn't it? And like we said, I don't know if that was something they were told to do, and second half push up a little bit more. But regardless, that definitely helped us just because we got a little bit higher up.
Yeah, so talk us through the goal, Neil. I think it was Lewis Cook who started. I think it was Adam Smith who fed Lewis Cook and through ball, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think Smith won it back, didn't he? Gave it to Cook. I mean, he does that so well. He took 2 or 3 strides and then ping. And I thought it was going to drop towards the defender's left foot, but at the last minute, it might have been the same wind that took Solanke's. It just went over his head, and I think we, if I wanted any player to be one-on-one, it would probably be Junior Stanislas, because he's ice cold, isn't he? I think Solanke or Surridge would have maybe snatched at that chance, and Josh King probably would have tried to go around him to mixed effect. But Stanislas is normally, money on that he will hit the target, and he did, and thank God he didn't go off, because he was having a poor game. I love this comment at the end when the Sky, after they gave him the man of the match, when he said, "I don't know how," and he was right, because there was probably only Surridge and Rico that played worse. And but like Tom said, you leave quality on the pitch for a reason, and that's what he did.
Yeah, and there's a danger, Jeff, with some strikers that they almost tried too hard to score from that situation. But on AFCB TV with the interview with Junior, he said he didn't do anything special. He just tried to hit the ball with his left foot, towards goal, like under the keeper, and thankfully it went in. And it was just that composure and, as Neil said, just some ice coolness in front of goal.
Yeah, it was a terrific finish under pressure. Really, I mean, we shouldn't let this game pass without realising what pressure that Brentford result put on us, and what pressure the results early in the day put on us as well. The players. I think maybe that's part of why the players were a little bit under par. They put a lot into that Brentford game, didn't get the result. Stoke away is not going to fill you with a lot of enthusiasm, as we've said. But also, I think the fact that all the other rivals won narrowly earlier in the day, and if we lose that game or draw it, we risk being out of touch with the top two. So, cool finish. Thank the Lord that he did put it away. Really good.
I was just going to say, I do think a lot of the time that we almost, whether it's always the right thing to do, but we almost feel like if we can make sure that we keep a clean sheet and we don't concede, we've got enough quality as the game goes on, when the other team start to tire, that we'll get a chance and we'll take it. That was exactly what happened last night. We've had a few 0-0s, haven't we, where that didn't happen. But there's a lot of games this season where I could think it seemed like that. Wickham, Bristol City, where but you just felt like the longer the game went on, we've just got that bit of quality. And yeah, I mean, if it keeps working, it keeps working. It certainly wasn't great to watch. But like Jeff said, I think every time we've lost 3 games, we've bounced back with a win straight away afterwards. And that's really positive to have, because like you say, the results didn't go great for us earlier in the day. So that was definitely pleasing.
That's my worry. But the only nagging doubt I've got is that I still think we've only played well in 3 games, like for 90 minutes. Barnsley, Huddersfield, and there's one other that escapes me where I thought we played well. And it's almost like, how long can you go on with? I think the last championship side we had was an average squad, really, in terms of where they come from in their careers, but they were dragged up by management. I almost think now we've got a little bit of the opposite. We don't seem to have an identifiable style or conviction or anything about us, but we've got players better than that league, and they're digging us out results with moments of class. So there aren't many players that would pick that pass that Lewis Cook picked, and there aren't that many players that would finish as calmly as Junior Stanislas. And I think that's my worry. I'd like to see us in the next 3 games push on and start to really have an identifiable style and play some teams off the park.
I think it reminded me a lot, Neil, of you remember that game in the promotion season away at Ipswich, where we couldn't pass the ball to each other for long periods, and then suddenly Kenwyne Jones comes on and scores. It felt a bit like that, like there was an inevitability that we were going to draw that game 0-0 or lose when Sam Vokes scores in the last minute. But thankfully, neither thing happened. That's great. Yeah,
it's one of those results where you look at when other teams do it. Like Norwich have done it a number of times, and we look upon it as being, they've ground it out. It's a very gritty performance. We don't know much about the performance, and you can see a lot of their fans almost complaining throughout the game. And then at 85 minutes, everything's good, and it's almost the same with us. And thankfully, we had the coolest man in the stadium to then put the ball in the back of the net, and it was a player, Neil, that was subject to some racial abuse online later that evening via Twitter. It's not nice to see. I mean, certainly any discrimination is not tolerated, but when it's so blatant like that, absolutely horrible.
It's incredible. It's still, I don't know why, it still surprises me because I think, having grown up in the 80s, probably only me and Jeff can remember where you used to get booming abuse off the terraces, and thank God that pretty much died out, and you get the odd idiot shouting something, but you don't get that mass herd thing. So I always kind of think, hopefully it's gone. I think the problem is social media makes it too easy. The fact you can be anonymous on social media makes it even easier. But it's just, for him to have to read that, it's just in this day and age, you're just like, but I mean, I suppose you look at the certain towns in Britain still, Stoke, Burnley, towns that have had good sort of like BNP support in the past, and there's just a slight undercurrent, but it's so sad in this day and age.
I think with what Neil said as well, because obviously I wasn't around in the 80s, and I've never really noticed it in the stadium. But the problem is that social media it's getting that balance in it. I mean, we've seen the things with, for example, Steve, with the things in Uganda and things like that. It's so good, social media, for things like that. That never would have been possible before. But also, like Neil said, because you can hide behind a keyboard, no one knows who you are. And so that wouldn't have happened in the 80s. So it's kind of getting that balance in it, because I certainly haven't noticed it really in the stadium. Like Neil said, you hear a few idiots shout things out now and again, but it is that social media thing. And Twitter, I believe it was Twitter, wasn't it? They've got to get a hold on it, because there's got to be some sort of verification, something, because it's so easy. I could go and do it now, just go and make an account, and just put a random picture up, and no one would have a clue who I am. And and it's so easy to just message a celebrity or a footballer or whatever like that. It's they need to do something about it, and not just hide away and act like it's not their problem, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen in your stadiums because there's a way for people to easily send a quiet text, and that person, whoever's got the ticket, which row they're in, which seat number they're in, and it can be traced back to an address unless they've sold the ticket. But either which way, they can be found out. And I said on Twitter this morning as well, as you said, Tom, it's simply too easy for anyone to sign up and then just post this kind of stuff. And I said there are so many steps that Twitter can take. That they're getting better with their retrospective action. Sometimes it used to take them ages to actually take down a tweet or an account, and they did it fairly quickly this time. But in this day and age, it needs to be faster. And there are some preventative measures that can be done, simple verification checks, or they can have some algorithms to police certain words, or look at certain kind of topics, and like even simple things like having a 24-hour cooling off period for anyone that joins Twitter, because a lot of them will just create accounts just to post one or two things, right, and then they're gone. Have a 24-hour cooling off period, and then they can tweet after that, maybe. But like you say, mobile phone verification and stuff like that. Even a sort of eBay style feedback system where users who actually legitimately report discriminatory tweets, they can build up some kudos, and then they can earn the power to then make that process faster when you're sort of reporting tweets. Having a trusted network. And unfortunately at the moment it's just Twitter's a funny place, because as you say, you get all of the good things but then all the bad things that come with it. And you get your kind of like football Twitter accounts that take the piss out of each other. We all see that, which is fine to an extent, but there's always going to be someone that crosses the line. It's horrible to see, Jeff.
Yeah, it was, and I think the club's done a great thing in putting a statement out. It's got picked up by the mainstream media as well. The stories on the BBC website, which is going to get loads more media coverage for it. And that hopefully will create a solution for it. You're right, Twitter's got to be better. There are plenty of idiots on Twitter. Football is a safe-ish place, but there are plenty of idiots who do the sort of thing that person did. I don't even know if they're a Stoke fan. I just think they're a racist idiot.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So just a couple of minutes then. We got Oldham in the FA Cup next week. What do we do? Is this a chance to blood the youth? Players like like Offerball, Jaden Anthony, Zamora, Tom. Any thoughts on what he should be doing?
Yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? I mean, one, to just rotate. I mean, the likes of Solanke, who's played in every game, I believe. You've got to use it to rotate, but also to look at some of these youngsters and say, all right, you've got a chance now to try and give me another problem. Definitely, I think he'll be. I don't know how far along. I don't think Jack Stacey will be available, but whether we can get potentially 20 minutes out of maybe a Danjuma and Mepham. I don't know if Carter Vickers is around, but maybe something like that. But some players like that. I think you might see a few in there. You might see Rico potentially. Be interested to see who plays on that right side, because he'll want to rest Smith. But we haven't really. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw someone like Offerball having to do a job maybe at right back or something like that. Because you've got to use it to rotate Smithy, and I don't think Stacey should be about. But yeah, and seeing players like Riquelme, like Jaden Anthony, see how they get on, which will be, well, I'm quite looking forward to it, because it's kind of a free hit. You'll have a lot of players kind of playing with a bit of no fear, which will be quite nice. I don't think Josh King will be in the squad, because you don't want to cup tie him. But
True.
that will be interesting to see if he's available, because obviously he's not playing. So if we're genuinely it's a fitness thing, then he should be playing, shouldn't he? He should be in the squad, but I don't think he will. It will be somehow. But yeah, I expect it to be a much changed side. Dan Gosling probably captaining the side out, and it'd be a nice. And regardless of how many changes we make, I still think we should have too much and get through, hopefully.
Can we just talk about Josh? I mean, if I'm a Premier League club, I'm not going to pay millions of pounds for Josh King because he's hardly played and he doesn't look match fit to me. He needs to play games. Surely he's got to play.
I think you're buying him. I think his agents will have touted him, and I think people will buy him on reputation because he's a guy who can score goals in the Premier League. So I would imagine that West Ham are interested. They've always been interested. I imagine they'll bid, but I think they will bid low, and this will become the problem. And I think it will play out throughout January. I think he'll have a mystery back injury and won't play at Oldham in the Cup. Would be my guess on it. I think people will be interested in signing him because if I was a Premier League manager in the bottom half of the Premier League, I'd sign him because if for nothing else, because of his pace, just takes teams up the pitch. So the problem that we'll have is because of the reasons you talked about, Jeff. He's not worth the 15 to 20 million that we probably think he's worth, and we need to get some money. So I reckon he'll go on right at the end. I think he'll go right at the end.
Yeah, I agree.
So are we worrying about Dan Juma? Are we worrying about Brooks? Are we worrying about Lewis Cook, Tom?
No, I don't think so. I think we'll be all right. I think there might be. I don't think we're not in a position where we need to sell them players. I think Josh will definitely be someone that will probably go near the end, mainly because I think if he's a free transfer, then a lot of clubs will come in. It'll be harder for a team like a West Ham to sign him because there'll be more competition. Plus, you have to probably pay the agent more and more wages and things like that because he's a free. So I think we might see him go for about 5 million. I think it'd be nice if we can maybe let him go and kind of say to a team like West Ham, or give us one of your lads on loan maybe if there's someone around, who knows. But I've got no problems that we'll keep everyone else. They're all on decent contracts and things like that, so I think we'll be okay. I'm more excited to see whether, nothing to do with us, but whether Norwich keep hold of Buendia. Because I think he's probably, I'd like to say Lewis Cook, David Brooks. I think he's probably the best player in the league, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And he will be, so if they lose him, they'll be, and I think teams will come in for him. So that'll be interesting.
Arsenal are watching him. And talking about Arsenal, surely a player with a great FA Cup illustrious past that needs to make his debut against Oldham's Jack Wilshere.
If we lose Josh King or whatever happens with Josh King, but we get Jack Wilshere in, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Just get him until the end of the season, see what he can do. Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah.
I read a piece last week on Josh that was comparing him to Ryan Fraser, and I'd just like to say that he is no way comparable to Ryan Fraser.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Yeah, agreed. There's
time
yet.
If he doesn't get a move, let's see.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, it's going to be an interesting month for AFC Bournemouth because there are some winnable matches for us. We've got Oldham on the 9th. Millwall, the rearranged match, is on the 12th. And a good chance for us to pick up some points, I've got to say. And maybe we can confirm our place in the automatic spots. You never know. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam.
Tom, as ever, thanks, mate.
Cheers, boss.
And Neil, nice one. Thanks for coming on.
Always a pleasure.
And we'll see you in the next video at the Cherries.